Good afternoon, brothers and sisters, and welcome once again to the Self-Improvement Basis for Community Development Talk Show. I'm your weekly host, Brother James Muhammad. I'm honored to have on the show this afternoon Mrs. Ginger Lay. Good afternoon, sister.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And welcome to the Self-Improvement Basis for Community Development Talk Show.
Okay.
Mrs. Ginger Lay is the founder of Project Second Chance.
Yes.
I love that name. What is the inspiration behind Project Second Chance? And tell us a little bit something about yourself.
Okay. Well, Project Second Chance came about when I was actually going through a process of being indicted by the feds. I ended up going to prison, federal prison, on a conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud case. It was a nationwide case. It was a big case. I would just tell anybody to Google my name because I cannot mention my co-defendant because he was an ex-NFL player whom I did not know at the time. And during my time of going through pretrial, I started researching. I would go to the DOJ website to kind of see what people were getting as far as their sentencing was, like how much time they were getting for health care. And then I started researching life as a felon. And that's when the inspiration of Project Second Chance came about. Because I started realizing that most of the time, you basically become a second-class citizen when you become a felon. As we all know, the 13th Amendment was written to free, I would say, the slaves. However, the little caveat is as long as you didn't commit a crime, you were still free. And that amendment still holds true to today in our criminal justice system. As a felon, learning to live a different life of now I have to expose that I'm a felon. Now I have to expose that I've been to prison. Never having experienced that in my life is a difficult journey. And so many people go back, and I want to create a safe, non-judgmental environment that will reduce the recidivism rate of the population of individuals who we're not talking about just federal and state prison, we're also talking about juvenile delinquents, at-risk youth, gangs, because all of those individuals end up going in prison. Helping single parents, because a lot of people do not understand that most people who go to prison come from single parent homes because of trauma, abuse, whatever the situation. They get caught with the wrong crowd and they end up getting in trouble. So Project Second Chance actually was a vision that came to me. I was on my knees praying one morning, and I was asking God, why was I going through this? I was like, I'm not understanding. I made all this money, and I'll get into that later on. I did what I was supposed to do. And what came to me was, I'm allowing you to go through this because I need you to bring men and women to me who have no other choice but to serve me. And that's where it came from.
Beautiful. Brothers and sisters, we're just now tuning in to the Self-Improvement Basis for Community Development Talk Show. I'm your weekly host, Brother James Muhammad. I'm honored to have on the show the founder of Project Second Chance, Mrs. Ginger Lay. Now, as you were speaking, that sounds like a white-collar crime.
Yes, it is.
Tell us something about yourself and what led up to the crime and your childhood. And was there any motivating factors that caused you to commit this crime?
I believe that we as people have inner kids in us that are hurt, that are never healed and never healed. Our parents just tell us to get over it if something happens. Oh, you big boy, quit crying. You gotta be a man. Or women, our mother be like, oh, just get on, go sit down and deal with it. Growing up in my life, I was bullied a lot. And my first 4 years of school was fine. I was an A/B student, did good in school. From my 5th grade year all the way till my 10th grade year, I was bullied. And by the same group of girls rather. And most people don't understand. Even some of my family members don't know, but I tried to commit suicide twice. And I was also put in a treatment center for depression. My dad left when I was 8, and I was a daddy's girl. I wasn't a mom's girl. And I felt as though my dad abandoned me. So all of that in me, I wanted to get back at everybody that hurt me. I wanted them to see me in this limelight and this glamorous life of living, of having money, of having cars, of having that life. So I could show that, hey, you thought you hurt me, but you didn't. So a lot of people who end up in prison or even going through life, we have wounded inner children. And I truly feel one of the biggest problems in our nation is to heal those inner children that are in us. But unfortunately, we don't have the resources for mental health counseling. We don't have the resources for therapy. We don't have those resources that heal the inner person, that little boy or girl that might have got wounded by their aunt or molested or whatever the case may be, that they lash out in other ways. Mine lashed out in wanting to be uberly successful, wanting to have millions, wanting to have the big house, wanting to be on TV and the magazines. And when I made the money, and when I made the type of money I made, that's the trajectory I was heading toward. I got an interesting phone call. I was doing in the compounding pharmacy. Compounding is when you mix different medications together for people who may not be able to swallow pills, so they do it in liquid form. And I had gotten involved in it around June of 2014. And I met this young man through a group on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn just had tons of these groups that you could join in pharmacies. It was so much money to be made, I'll just put it like that. And at that time, a lot of private insurance companies were doing it, but they started backing off and stopping. But TRICARE was not. So I got a call to move to an opportunity to move to Atlanta, Georgia in November. So I flew to Atlanta, did the interview. They wanted me to be their human resource individual. And I met them through my manager, who now is serving a 22-year sentence. He went to trial. And so he gives me a call in December of 2014. I don't have a pen to my name. I got a child in college, another child getting ready to go to college. And he was like, I got this opportunity for you. We're doing compounding creams. There was a pain cream, a scar cream, and a metabolic vitamin. And he said TRICARE was paying $25,000 per month for the total for all three. And he said, they were using a method called telemedicine, which is, you can call the doctor, they prescribe you a prescription and send it into the pharmacy. So I was like, well, I don't know anybody in the military. So I called an ex-business partner of mine, and he was like, well, he was doing the free government cell phone, so he knew some people. He said, well, and the guy who I was working with was like, well, I'll front you the $5,000 to pay for the consultations for the telemedicine. So we're working day and night for like 2 weeks. And I went to one of the car lots, and I said, look, I've got a big check coming. I want a Range Rover. And he was like, okay, we're going to give you the Range Rover on consignment. 2008. That's always been my dream car. It was on my vision board and everything. My first commission check was January the 20th. I got my first commission check you're looking at from December the 14th, 2014. I got my first commission check January the 2nd of 2015, and it was $126,000. And now all of that wasn't mine because I had to pay out other people. But as time went on, the next check was $300 and something thousand. That was 2 weeks later. The following check at the end of the month was $700 and something thousand. The month of May and April alone, I got around $4 million. So between January and June of 2015, so we're looking at about a 5 month period, I personally earned around $4.2 million or more. The government has me on the hook for 6.3 because they look at all the money you collected, not who you paid out, but all the money that came in. It was to the point where to have millions of dollars deposited into your account blew my mind. But during that same time, my son got killed. He died on Mother's Day in a car accident. So I'm making all this money, life is going good, and then he dies. The pharmacy found out they were doing some stuff that weren't quite right. And so May of 2015, they all made us W-2 employees. We were supposed to be W-2 from the beginning, but what they had us do was form corporations where they would pay our corporation, so they would avoid paying Social Security tax and that sort of thing. So they changed everybody to a W-2, and then they fired everybody June the 30th of 2015. I was 38 years old, retired, and a multimillionaire. I bought me a nice house in Atlanta, ended up getting another Range Rover, trading that one in and getting another Range Rover, and ended up buying a sports car, bought a house full of furniture, and was living life fine. And then got an interesting phone call the next year that the pharmacy that we were working for had been raided by the feds. And the gentleman that I was working for, they had came and got all his stuff. Now this TRICARE thing was nationwide. It's still going on now. This isn't just stopped. Because the DOD ended up paying, I think they said $1.2 billion over a 12-month period out on compounding creams. And of course the big wigs didn't get in trouble. Express Scripts, who's what you would call a PBM, pharmacy benefits manager, they're the ones that pay the claims. They didn't get in trouble. Everybody else got in trouble. The pharmacies, the sales reps, the marketers, the pharmaceuticals, everybody got in trouble but the folks who was paying the claims. And so that's how I ended up getting in trouble. Now, I didn't know I was going to go to prison at that time because I didn't know how the feds work. But when I just came back from the Dominican Republic with some girlfriends of mine, June the 9th, I'll never forget. I was 15 minutes from my house. And I get a phone call from this gentleman who's telling me, Ginger, the pharmacy was raided this morning. I think they'd given him heads up. I kind of knew something was coming back in March because someone put a little bug in my ear, but I didn't know what it really was about. They were like, the feds has a list of 1,000 people that they're looking for concerning this compounding cream. So he calls me and tells me that. I turn around and I had met this gentleman who I ended up getting engaged to, but not engaged anymore. And I ended up moving in with him because I didn't want that situation where the feds show up at your house with SWAT. And
like that.
I'm like, I don't want to have to go through that. So he ended up getting indicted November the 29th of 2016. His trial was supposed to be that February. They haven't even came and got me yet. They were looking for me. They thought I still was in Mississippi. They didn't know I was in Atlanta. He changed counsel and his court date got moved to October of 2017. Long enough for the feds to finally come get me. So I had a procedure done, and my then fiance had to take me to the hospital, and it was one of those outpatient things. But the day before I was driving home, there was this gray car parked at the stop sign. And you know how your neighbors, you know what kind of cars your neighbors drive, you know when something looks out of place. And I passed that car at that stop sign and I said, that car is not supposed to be there. The next day, I heard the doorbell ring and I walked across the hall to my daughter's room. And I looked out the window and I saw that same gray car. And I went and got him. I said, they're here. That's exactly what I said. I said, they're here. So he goes and answers the door and they hand him what they call a target letter. There's 3 letters the feds will give you. A witness letter, a subject letter, and a target letter. If you get a target letter, it's a wrap for you. They're coming. Well, pretty much you're the target of the investigation. This was in August, a Friday. I retained counsel that Monday. I called an attorney and was in their office. She said, bring everything you got, every phone, every laptop, everything you have. I brought all that. Did not know, there was 2 things I found out that day. I had a warrant for my arrest, and the day that I got served the target letter, I had been indicted by the grand jury. 2 weeks later, we're going through, the attorneys are doing all they rescinded the warrant, which was good because I would have been on a long bus from Atlanta to Miami because the case is out of Miami. And so this is how quick this went. 2 weeks later, I was arraigned. Before my co-defendant, before I was even added to his case, his indictment as a superseding co-defendant, I already had a plea deal. I had a plea deal from the time I got the letter to the time he got they added me as a co-defendant. I had a plea deal. I even told my attorney I walked off and said, look, we're not going to trial. Give me the best deal you can get, because I researched fast enough to know they got a 97% conviction rate if you go to trial. Mm-hmm. You're not going to win if you go to trial. And then if they lose, they're going to take you right back to trial. They're just going to get a whole nother set of jurors to convict you. They're not going to lose. They spend too much money. So October comes along. This is during the time of his trial. And the prosecutor prepares you, because I was what they call their key witness. The hurricane came through and they had to postpone the trial. So they moved it to December.
Okay.
The judge was like, I'm not doing the trial during the Christmas holiday. It's postponed again to January of 2018. I had to plead guilty before the trial started. So when I pled guilty January the 8th to conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud, I had a 13-count indictment. My main crime was, well, what they would call a primary crime was conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud and wire fraud. Because every time he paid me over state lines, it's considered wire fraud. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, because if you work for a company in California and you live in Tennessee, every time they pay you is wire fraud.
But it's illegal.
But
the process is illegal. That's why.
Yeah, but yeah. So I pled guilty, and three of my counts, because I had 13 counts, he had a 52-count indictment. 3 of my counts really couldn't even hold, because they put it on dates that I wasn't even part of the. They put me back in the conspiracy way back in September of 2014. I'm like, I'm not part of it. So anyway, he goes to trial. I'm the primary witness. And from my testimony alone, because they didn't call any of his other sales reps. I was the only sales rep that they called. And from my testimony alone, because he did try to throw me under the bus, he was indicted on 18 counts out of 52. And he was sentenced to 262 months. And he had already served 2 months in, because he was automatically remanded when he was found guilty.
Brothers and sisters, you're just now tuning in to the Self-Improvement Basis for Community Development Talk Show. I'm your weekly host, Brother James Muhammad. I'm here with Mrs. Ginger Lay. She's the founder of Project Second Chance, and we just heard her story. Now, you were talking about the healing process when you was describing your childhood. Mm-hmm. You went to prison, you served time. In relationship to the healing process, what did you learn in prison? How did you feel about prison? This strange environment. And it was your first time going to prison.
It wasn't my first time going to prison in a way of that. I had some child support issues with an ex-husband, but that I would probably be in 2 or 3 hours and then get out.
Okay.
I was supposed to go to a camp. In federal prison, you have different levels. You have a camp, you have low, medium, high, supermax. Your El Chapo guys up in supermax, okay? But because I was due to have a surgery the next day, I was sentenced March the 20th, and I was supposed to have a surgery March the 21st. But the judge felt as though I was a flight risk, even though he only sentenced me to 21 months. I was a flight risk, and so he remanded me to the U.S. Marshal's custody immediately. And so I was designated to go to Carswell, which is in Dallas, Texas, or Fort Worth. Carswell has a camp, and it's a medical facility. Carswell has everything, basically. It has a camp on the outside, but then it's a hospital. Then it's a medium facility, and then it has a supermax. It has a max for women, you would say. And so I transferred from Miami to Atlanta. I did ride on Conair, and it's not what it looks like on TV. But it is Conair. Then you transfer from Atlanta to Oklahoma, which is a transfer center. And then you ride a bus from Oklahoma to Dallas. When I got off the bus, there were like 20 of us on the bus. You get off the bus, you got guns pointed at you as soon as you walk off the bus. And that's when you know it's real. Prison is real, period. But to have guns pointed at you and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't kill nobody. Why in the world is it really this crucial? So you go through the process of getting, go through intake process. Now Miami category, because I needed surgery, they put me in as a category 4, which is a medical level, which is meaning you can't go anywhere. And they had a medical hold on me. Now, I really didn't have time to reflect on my childhood. I laid low a lot. My ministry, I actually ended up with a ministry in prison. And it started in Miami. There was a book by a guy named Matthew Battison called The Circle Maker. You may sound like you never heard about it. And he says you write circles around your prayers. And so what came to me was to do the Jericho walk of 7, you walk around 7 times and you pray. And this lady named Karina did it with me. She did the 7 times, and then she was like, okay, I'm done. But something in my spirit said, you need to continue to walk. Before I left Miami, I had 14 women walking with me every day praying in the rec room. And I did that all the way till I got to Texas. Now when I got to Texas, I would walk and pray, and I would do it by myself. I got to Carswell July the 26th, I believe, or right at the 4th of July, somewhere around there. And I would walk and pray by myself, and I do it in my unit. And then the guards, they always felt like, they said they have too many people together. They feel like you're trying to conspire or start a riot or escape plan or whatever. So I spent my time walking and praying and reading and writing. I stayed in the education center. I stayed in the chapel library. The word got out about me walking and praying. And there was this book written by a lady named Katie Sosa called Key to Your Expected End. She was sentenced to 13 years and ended up doing 6. She started a ministry in prison too. And I read her book, and she said in her book that the Most High will give you a scripture that will give you your release. And the scripture that I literally opened up my Bible to Job 42:10. It was one of those situations where you're like, oh my goodness, this is interesting. In Job 42:10 says, and the Most High turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends, and he gave them twice as much as he had before. That was the scripture I turned to. And so I went outside, ended up going to the hospital. I developed a lot of health issues in prison that I'm still fighting with now. Because you do not get adequate medical care at all.
Well, good nutrition.
Oh, definitely that. Well, the thing about Carswell is most judges think Carswell is a hospital. They lost their accreditation in 2006. It's just an ambulatory and a hospice center. They can't even give you stitches at Carswell. They have to send you out. So I got sent out a lot. I cost taxpayer. Well, I cost my own self because I pay taxes, and I pay more than enough taxes to cover my own room and board and everybody else's. So I walked around the track, and normally I would just walk 4 times, but that day in particular I walked 7, and I got a couple of signs that I was like, okay, something is finna turn. So December 31st, we had 25 women walk that track with me, and I prayed for each one of them. And then January the 1st, the same thing happened. We had a lady who was a stud, got everything at Carswell, and I'm gonna get into that too, who did not believe in, she was a Native American. She didn't believe in no higher power. She didn't believe in nothing. Okay. And this Hispanic lady, most of the people I hung around with were Hispanics, and other white collar criminals, CPAs, doctors, lawyers, surgeons. I'm like, what y'all doing here? She changed her life and she would come get me after the gender. I need you to come pray for me. People would literally come get me. Also known as the lady who prayed for everybody. And so I was supposed to be, my release date was September 13th of 2019. And I wanted to go to Halfway House because Carswell was one of those places where you it was torture. It was really, really, really torture. And so I did a cop-out. A cop-out is when you write a request to your doctor wanting to see them. And the main doctor was like, why are you here anyway? Because your iron level is fine. You should have. Why did they send you here? I write a cop-out that Sunday night, and then I look at what we call our call-out. Call-out sheet is where you have your different appointments, whether it's an eye appointment, a doctor appointment, an education appointment, whatever. And I had one to see my doctor. And I went to my doctor and I said, look, this is the situation. I've done the walking and praying now. This was in February. I said, I want to go to Halfway House. I said, the director said I can hold off on the surgery. And I said, will you please lower my care level to a 4 and take the medical hold off of? She did it immediately. I went to see my counselor. Them the laziest folks you ever want to see. They don't ever want to work. I went to see her and finally got her to put in the request for me to go to Halfway House. Under normal circumstances, I was not supposed to go to a Halfway House. I got my Halfway House date in 21 days. And I knew when I was leaving. And so I ended up flying. When most people was on the bus, I flew. Got to the Halfway House, and it's almost a brand new house. I think it's only been there 5 years, and it's in Mississippi. Oh, and the food was a whole lot better, of course. And I ended up going on home confinement August the 20th. I ended up having my surgery August the 26th, and I'm currently on 3 years of supervised release.
No.
Yeah, the feds gonna get you. They gonna keep their foot on your neck until they can't put their foot on your neck no more.
All right. Brothers and sisters, you're just now tuning in to the Self-Improvement Basis for Community Development Talk Show. I'm sitting here with my friend, my partner in the Prison Reform Ministry, Mrs. Ginger Lay. She's given us her testimony, but now we want to talk about this Project Second Chance.
Okay.
You know, considering what's going on in Mississippi with the prison, also in many states around us, Project Second Chance. Sound inspirational? Mm-hmm. What is the motivation behind it, and how can those who are incarcerated or those who are being released get involved?
Okay. Well, Project Second Chance has a lot of different components to it. Not only do we deal with the reentry part of it, we have a program called Prison Pen Pal Support.
Okay.
I'm a certified life coach, also neuro-linguistic programming. I'm studying right now to get my paralegal certification so I can understand the law a lot more. The Prison Pen Pal Support is for those who are incarcerated. And it is like a life coaching program where we address those issues that they're not getting addressed. Because a lot of prisons, they may have a psychology department. But when you may have 1,400 inmates and you don't know who has problems and who, you don't have enough staff to address those issues. So the Prison Pen Pal Support Program is designed to deal with those anger management issues, how to deal with the stress of being in prison, meditation, getting yourself centered, trying to create a regimen. It was hard for me because they called me a short timer. And they said when you're short timer, it's hard. I couldn't even get a job. I actually worked suicide watch to stay out of the kitchen. That's for those who are incarcerated. Now, when they're released, they go into the reentry program. Project Second Chance is a membership-based program. It is not a non-profit. It is a for-profit organization. Reason being is once you get into bed with the feds, you don't ever want to get into bed with the feds.
And you don't want to get in the feds.
Because when you become tax exempt, you back in bed with the feds. So you then transition into the reentry program, and during that program, it's only $10. We know when most people come out of prison, they don't have any money. Okay, so that we primarily help you with housing and employment. I have a school called CenetosAcademy.com that is actually an active school. And we have over 1,200 courses, and that we from career development, workforce, computer skill training, everything. So once they go into the reentry side of it, which is when they've been released between 0 and 4 months, our main job is to help them get a job. Writing resumes, helping them do interviews, mock interviews, and all of this is done over the phone. Through the phone, Skype, internet, whatever. Normally they'll be in the halfway house. The halfway house will let them get passes to go to the library or go to the job center. So it's not like they don't, and you can have a cell phone in most halfway houses. So they can do this over their phone as well. Now, once they transition out of that, then we have different levels. We have a bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. The bronze program is $55 a year. That one, they get coaching, they get legal assistance, housing assistance, employment. They get the educational courses for free. They get a lot of, just a lot of things to help them reintegrate into society. Then of course you got the silver, where you get more, the gold, and then of course you got platinum. Now there's an initiative that I'm launching March the 1st through the school, and it's called 70millionfelons.com. Because there are 70 million Americans with a criminal record. And I am giving free courses. There's 25 courses, and they can take all of them for free. And the goal is to, of course, get the awareness out of the effects of being a criminal and being a felon and being labeled that. But also giving them the skills they need to reintegrate into society so they do not reoffend. Because I think the statistic is 76% of state prisoners reoffend within 5 years, and 44% of federal within 5 years. It's a revolving door. The system is not designed to keep you out. There's no such thing as rehabilitation in prison. There's not even a program. They have RDAP, which is for those who have drug problems. Most of them are your biggest. Most people reoffend because of gun charges or because of drugs. That's the biggest reason they offend. So Project Second Chance, that's the reentry part. The post-entry part is for those who've been out for a while. And so let's say someone wants to learn financial literacy, or they want to learn health and wellness, or they want to learn about investments and things like this. The post-entry are those who have been out for a minute, but there's other things that they want to learn. They may want to learn how to start their own business or how to run a business or whatever they may want to learn. So that's the post-entry side. The other program we have that is near and dear to me is called Second Mothers, Second Fathers. That's for the caregivers and guardians of those who are taking care of the children who are incarcerated.
The grandmothers.
The grandmothers, the cousins, the family, whoever. Because they don't realize the resources that are available to them. And then the children are going through trauma because mom and dad is not there. And so that is to create a mentorship of outside people. Of course, you got to go through background check because we're not dealing with pedophiles and other folks. But to be that mentor for that child, so the child doesn't feel bitter. See, that creates an inner wounded child. My mom and my dad, or my mom or my dad, is in prison right now. So we all idolize our parents as being this person that cannot do any wrong. Even when they whoop us, we feel as though they can't do any wrong. But when the judicial system says we're putting you in prison and you're taking my mom or my dad away from me because they've done something wrong, that makes a child feel like they're a bad person. Children should not ever feel that way. And so that's where Second Mothers, Second Fathers come in. The goal is to eventually raise the funds to get a camp where they can go to in the summertime, have fun, get the cares off their mind of mom and dad being away. The caregivers get a break from them. Of course, we're providing resources for the caregivers because a lot of caregivers don't know about they don't understand they can get food stamps. They don't understand they can go to the Department of Human Services and those sort of things. The other part of Project Second Chance, and we have certain initiatives, but the other one is actually called 21 Months, which is how long I was sentenced to. Because so many, I hate the word felon, so many of us come up with brilliant ideas. One guy in particular who created a company called Pigeonly was a brother who did, I think he did 10 years. He was in a car involving a robbery. He started Pigeonly, and Pigeonly is a program in which, they send pictures, they do the phone calls and everything, but it was started by a young black man. Another attorney by the name of Michael Betts, he had a 19-year sentence. Got out of prison, was accepted by every Ivy League college, graduated from Yale Law. He now practices in the state of Vermont. Brandon Sample did 19 years for Securities and Exchange fraud. He's now an attorney. There's so many people who, when they saw the issues and the problems in the judicial system, that they're like, wait a minute, I want to change this. One objective of Project Second Chance, and my goal is hopefully to be based in DC area for political reasons. Everybody I hire, I want to be a felon. Because I don't want you getting out of prison, working a job paying $7.50 an hour, or a company makes you feel like, well, I'm going to give you this because you really have no other option. I want to pay good wages, offer good benefits, offer good therapy, eventually get into real estate where I'm buying housing and being able to provide them with housing, because the two biggest things they have issue with is employment and housing. Jay Morrison, I don't know if you know who he is, who started the Tulsa Real Estate Fund out of Atlanta. I just found about crowdfunding real estate. That's something I'm researching, because that's the way to raise funds, to be able to get a building, to launch Project Second Chance, to have not only a physical building, but we also have the digital base, and then we're also purchasing real estate property, apartment complexes, where when you get out, you got somewhere to go. Let's say you're in California, you was in like some kind of gang activity, and you're like, I don't want to go back to that life. If you're willing to relocate to another state, we'll help you. These are things to keep people out of prison so that they no longer go back. They don't get back in the same crowd, where they can feel like they're a part of society. The biggest issue with being a felon is no taxation without representation. We pay taxes, but we have no representation in Congress. We have no representation in the House. Senators don't care. They just want to talk about infrastructure and health care, but they're not talking about the $93 billion that's being spent every year on corrections. They'll cut every other entitlement program. But one thing I learned in prison is most people do not need to be in prison. There's other alternatives than locking up somebody behind a bar.
All right. Well, I just changed the name of the show, but I would call True Prison Reform.
So I was headed to
well, excuse me. Well, as I was listening to you in Project Second Chance, I'm thinking about, because I go to the Commons Prison, go to Whitefield Prison, and I try to start a halfway house myself. But the hardest thing I faced was funding and support. Even with a whole community of young men going into jail, no one saw the benefit of having a place where prisoners can come out and they can work on self first. If you gotta struggle to survive, you can't go back to your family because your family's tired of you. If you go back to the gang, they'll take care of you, but guess what? Most likely you're gonna end up back in jail.
Or dead.
So that must be a place where you can see refuge in, where you can take time to think, get therapy, you can clear your mind, because men coming out of prison and women are wounded. And we throw them back in society without dealing with their mental health and their spiritual health.
And emotional.
So I think that's a beautiful thing when you say Project Second Chance.
The slogan is helping felons get a second chance at life. Because that's what that's what they're getting. As when a person commits a crime, they become a second-class citizen in this country. You are stripped of all your constitutional rights. And I hear people say, oh, well, they're giving them the right to vote. None of the constituents that run have your best interests at heart. They do not. They have the general public. And what is really interesting is that population is such an untapped population. Nobody, you're looking at, 70 million, we have 320 million people in this country. 70 million people, that's an untapped market that still spend their dollars, that still go to church, that still got children,
pay taxes.
Who do all this, but then I can't vote. I feel like if my crime was not valid, why I should not have the right to bear arms and protect myself? If my crime wasn't valid, why am I stripped of voting? Even though I have my thoughts on voting too. But why shouldn't I be able to vote? Why should an employer discriminate against me because I made a mistake? I mean, you just didn't get caught on yours. There's this book that I read in prison, because I told you I read a lot, called 10 Felonies a Day. The average American commits 10 felonies a day. 10. They just don't get caught. You run the stop sign, technically speaking, that ticket is a felony. The little things we don't think about. You got judges on the benches who are like, okay, well, I'm just going to give you life. Okay, what have you done in your life that someone gave you a sense of forgiveness or reprieve that you can't give to someone else? And it's bad for people of color. One thing I saw, the new phase of mass incarceration is no longer black. They got all of us. It's Hispanics now. We would be on the bus, we would have 20 people. 3 of us, might be 2 blacks and 1 white, and the rest of them was Hispanics and couldn't speak a lick of English. That's the new phase now. But when you're looking at prisons wanting to fill their beds, and you're looking at private prisons, and let's not get into the political stuff with the Attorney General stuff, but you look at GeoCorp, who used to be CCA, and the only reason they changed their name is because they had so many lawsuits against them, so they came to the GeoCorp. When you had Obama trying to close down all these private prisons, of course, then we had this other person come in and now they're reopened. There was an article that said in the state of Kentucky, I think, or West Virginia, they're closing down schools, but they're spending $400 million or $400 billion to build a prison. That school to prison pipeline is real. They're not teaching our children self-sufficiency. They're not teaching our children financial literacy. They're not teaching our children anything. They tell our children, go to school, go to college, get a job, die. That's what that just seems like, and then if you get caught up in the system, it's really bad. And then you have people who have committed crimes 20 years ago, still getting denied housing, still getting denied employment 20 years ago. The federal side, you have to get a presidential pardon for your record to be cleared. That's another initiative that we're looking at doing. Because if I've been an upstanding citizen, I'm helping felons, or I've got a job, I'm taking care of my family, why should I have to petition the President of the United States to let me be free and get my rights back?
Brothers and sisters, just now tuning in to the Self-Improvement Basis for Community Development Talk Show. I'm Brother James Muhammad. I'm sitting here with Mrs. Ginger Lay. She is the founder of Project Second Chance. You know, sister, as you were speaking, Project Second Chance, private prison. See, that's a war there. When you say there's no true prison reform within the private system, I know because I go into the system, and I actually went with a brother who was up for parole, and they denied him. He had an excellent record, no write-ups, and they denied him. And it was interesting because they said he missed one class that the prison didn't offer. But that was a chance to put him back into the system for a whole year. But when you do that, and the lady was an African American lady, she was in Memphis doing this case via video. She never looked him in the face. She kept looking down. In my mind, said she already had her mind made up what we're gonna do with this young man here, regardless of his outstanding record. But because he missed one class that the prison did not offer, we're gonna send him back in the private system, which they get more money for him coming back. But she don't take in consideration the value of his life. He can lose his life within that year. He can have a mental, emotional breakdown within that year because of the poor food within the system. He can get all type of illnesses within that year. So I'm thinking, this system, is set up now for you to re-enter. So there's no such thing as I've been in honorable prison for the last 2 years, but now I got to get one more year out of you because you are an investment. So that's why when you say prison reform, then you say private prison, and then the war starts there. So because I got to take these classes out, because I remember the time you get your GED, they had all type of vocational class in prison. When I first started going into prison teaching, so, but when I went into Cummins prison, one thing I noticed, I was pulling up, I saw the men coming in from the field in these wagons, and the sheriff's on horse with shotgun. And I see the slavery mentality. These guys come in, and these long wagons hooked up to a tractor, and it's like 10 wagons hooked up to a tractor, and everybody have on the stripes. I'm like, wow.
Like the movie Life.
And I know people say, well, what did they do? They shouldn't have did what they did and all this. But but my mindset is when I go into the prison, I never ask you, what did you do to come here? That's not important to me. Because I come to bring you self-improvement, which is the basis of community development through the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But also I understand your nature, And if I just teach your nature, it overcomes all of the problems in your life. And you talk about America, a Christian nation, but won't give you a second chance. Won't give you a second chance. Won't give you a second chance.
I tell people we're not the land of the free and brave. We're the land of a mass incarceration.
Exactly.
That's the reality. We don't have a mass incarceration problem in America. We have a mass profiting problem, and it's just not on the state level. It's on the federal. 36. Okay, the minimum amount to house and feed an inmate. Minimum. This is healthy as a horse inmate. $36,000. I can pretty much tell you, I cost taxpayers about $150,000, and I was in there 14 months because they don't see we're human. We're a commodity in the prison system. We're taxpayers, and what the problem, how the media paints this, is what our problem is, and that's one thing. I pray that I get just the funds just to do PSAs on TV to expose it. Taxpayers see the news at night, and what they see is Pookie shot somebody on the corner last
First 5
night.
stories on Channel 5.
Everywhere you go, somebody got shot. So, only thing people think in their mind is, well, everybody's supposed to be in jail. Everybody's shooting everybody. I want to tell you of 2 stories, and I tell those 2 women I would advocate for them when I got out. I'm going to give you 2 stories. Before I went to prison, I was scrolling through the DOJ's website one day, and I was waiting on my pizza. And this is when I was living in Atlanta. And her name is Marie Neba, and she's from Cameroon. She's been over here for a while. She's a nurse practitioner. She is a woman of color. Marie Neba has stage 4 breast cancer. Marie Neba's crime was healthcare fraud, and her restitution was $13 million. Guess how much time Marie Neba got? 75 years for $13 million. Now there's another case by the name of Philip Informis out of Florida who was $1 billion healthcare fraud, largest in history. Just last year, you can look it up, 20 years. And the judge who was sentencing Marie at the time said, I hope I'm not being mean when I do this. Marie has a set of twin boys. The reason me and Marie became so connected is because I did African ancestry and I found out what tribe my mom come from and what tribe my dad come from, and so happened Marie comes from that tribe. And the surprising of the connection is I read about this lady before I even met. I didn't know she was in Carswell. I said when I read her case, I want to meet that lady. And one day it was nothing but divine. She was in front of me in the lunch line. And I said, I'm looking for Marie Neva. We sat at the table. Still didn't know who this lady was. We just got to talking. I said, I'm looking for Marie Neva. And she said, how did you know who I was? I said, I found out about you last year. Didn't know there's this other case. Her name is Amy Hernandez. Amy Hernandez's brother's wife was molesting the children. Went to a custody hearing. The dad shows up in court with a gun, kills the mother, who's molesting the children, her friend, and himself. Amy, her brother, and her mother got life imprisonment. It was called cyber stalking, and they don't have any. There's never been a case on Supreme Court. It's supposed to go to the Supreme Court. Hadn't heard anything else. Amy was living in Dallas, Texas, and this was happening in Delaware. And these are cases of when people. There's an interesting article I saw on Facebook why the innocent plead guilty. If I knew I could have beat the feds in court, I would have went to trial. But I had already done the research. And when you talk about, when you mention about, I'm not going to ask you why you're in prison, I would advise from a person who is in prison, who's gone through that, to ask. Because that hurt and that pain has to come out. You can put a Band-Aid on it. Because that's what has happened throughout society. These people are in prison and they got Band-Aids on. They got Band-Aids all over their bodies. I was in prison with one girl who was there. I was there with pedophiles. And I never shocked in my life to think that women are pedophiles, but they are. She was in a pedophile cult since she was 2 years old in her own family. It was a commune in Connecticut. I was in there with, if anybody know what Snapped, the show Snapped, I was in there with them. The lady who chopped her husband up in 69 pieces and spread his body across 2 states. I was in Jewish service with her every Shabbat. The lady who killed the angel of death at the VA, I was in there with her. I was in there with the most worst criminals, and I'm supposed to be at a camp. So the mental and emotional abuse, and I'm seeing bodyguards. One of the guards literally body slammed an inmate right in front of me. I saw a lady get shanked in the neck in the peel line with a pair of scissors. Those things you don't forget. You don't forget the women you left behind. But society says everybody who goes to prison is bad. But statistically, 70% of people in prison are non-violent offenders.
Now, for the sake of time, Second Chance program, how can they get in touch with you? Do you have a website? And also, I want to let everybody know you have a second name, White Collar Chick, and a YouTube site. But for the sake of time, how can we get more involved? How can we get in touch?
Okay, so right now you can go to Project Second Chance, and there's a registry, and you just put your name and your email, and you'll be notified when it's actually launched.
Okay.
White Collar Chick is actually my blog that I started blogging, writing my experience about life, the difference between purpose and passion, speaking engagements or whatever. And then when 70millionfelons.com, 70 million felons, and felons has an S on it, you'll be able to access that on March the 1st. And if you are a convicted felon, You can just go online, register the information. The one thing we do ask that if you do the 70 million felon program, is that we may ask for proof that you were incarcerated. The courses that we have are anger management, stress management, managing change, dealing with your interpersonal as well as job skills and things like that. I am on Facebook. White Collar Chick is on Facebook, Twitter. Instagram is White Collar Chick 1. Project Second Chance is also on Facebook, and it's Project Second Chance. And then the YouTube channel will actually be launching probably more of the summer. I'm trying to get the feel of that. I haven't done Facebook Live. I'm scared of that for some reason. I don't know why. But those are ways they can reach me, or they can actually whitecollarchick1@gmail.com is an email address that they can reach me at.
Okay, now in closing, we've said all of this. We've learned about Second Chance, Project Second Chance. How is the healing process going?
Rough. Yes. Because when I got out of prison, I had an expectation that I was going to get married to this particular person. There were some funds I had available that was stolen. I'm literally starting over. I ask myself on a daily basis, how did I get here? It's not as easy as under normal circumstances, had things gone the way it was supposed to go, I think things would have been a lot easier for me. Because everything that I'm doing, I'm funding myself. And it's a struggle and I'm paying restitution every month. I check into my probation officer every month, which is he's not a difficult guy. But when you go from having millions to going back to looking at the price of things, life is a whole different story. And I know I will get there again because I know I'm smart enough to get back there again. But it's hard because I did not want to come back home. I wanted to go back to the life that I started to get used to. I don't know if you've heard of Youth Vibe in Atlanta, which is through the Nation of Islam. I was on their board of directors. I was on the board of directors of Wings. I was on that trajectory of being that person I always wanted to be. But now the people that I serve and the people that God has given me to serve I'm with David and I got a Goliath system to fight against. All right. The last thing I want to leave with you is this, and I tell people this is one of my personal sayings. Sometimes we choose our purpose, and sometimes our purpose chooses us. This purpose chose me because, trust me, this isn't a purpose I would have chosen. I had another idea.
Well, you know what they say. If you ever want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Yeah. And that sounds cliché, but you were talking about Job earlier in closing. But Job had a mission, and he kept running from his mission. But the moral of that story is that sometimes God's put you in a vice where he can get your attention so he can wipe away all the plans that you thought you had and tell you his plan. And some of the most brilliant people I've met in the prison system come out and they contribute more to society than some of the people who have a Harvard degree. So, like Job, God has spit you back out now, and he have a mission for you, so you continue the healing process. And it's a struggle because you now have chosen to go to war with Satan's system now. The Bible says this is a people robbed and spoiled and hidden in prison. So I'm in that battle with you. I've been in that battle for 20 years. Brothers and sisters, thank you once again for tuning in to the Self-Improvement Basis for Community Development Talk Show. Thank you, Mrs. Ginger Lay. And she's going to keep coming back on to talk about more prison reform.
Yes.
And be a part of our prison reform ministry, especially dealing with the sisters.
Yes.
So until next week, brothers and sisters, peace be unto you.